welcome to today's Seed World Strategy webinar. My name is Alex Martin, and I serve as an associate editor for Seed World, and today I'm happy to be your host. Today's theme is stay on top of your game when it comes to digital tools and precision ag. We will be live tweeting during today's webinar, so if you'd like to join our conversation, please use the hashtag #StrategyWebinar to connect with us. We'd also like to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available at seedworld.com following the proceedings if there's anything you missed and you'd like to come back to. We have quite a full schedule today with 3 presenters this morning coming to chat to us about precision agriculture. So presenting the webinar today is Craig Rogers of Becks Hybrids, Jeff Diven of Ceres Imaging, and Kyle King of the Climate Corporation. During our presentation, of course, you're going to have some questions for our speakers. Please type these into the chat box at any time during the webinar, and we'll address them during the Q&A session we'll hold after our speakers finish their presentations. In today's webinar, you'll learn how precision agriculture has changed over the last decade, what digital tools can do to help you in the field and to help your customers, and where precision agriculture and digital tools might go in the future. Our first speaker of the afternoon is Craig Rogers. Craig is the precision farming lead at Becks Hybrids, the largest family-owned retail seed company in the United States. Headquartered out of Atlanta, the company was recently named the 3rd largest seed brand in the United States and the #1 seed brand in Indiana. As precision farming lead at Becks, Craig's main responsibilities include leading the company's precision farming efforts, heading up the direction of Becks' precision farming platform, FarmServer, and utilizing the information and data gathered from progressive customers to help farmers succeed. Craig has been instrumental in the creation and development of the FarmServer software, and he received an ESRI SAG award for his work. Craig is from Pendleton, Indiana, and attended Ball State University, where he received a degree in Geographic Information Systems and Mapping. He worked as a precision ag data analyst for Harvest Land Co-op before joining Becks' family of employees 8 years ago. Well, thank you for joining us today, Craig. We'll go ahead and let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, so today I want to tell you guys a little bit about Becks and how we help farmers succeed. So, you know, the precision farming landscape in my almost 20 years of doing this has changed in many ways, and in other ways it really hasn't. You know, the technology side of it has gotten better and better. There's a ton of innovation out there from a lot of different companies. When you look at the farmer perspective of it, I think that a lot of the companies, including Becks and a few of the other guys on this call today, has really pushed these customers and farmers into wanting to know more and more and more. So, you know, I would love to sit here and tell you guys that the days are gone when you walk into a guy's shop and he still doesn't have a stack of USBs in his cabinet somewhere, but we still run into that year after year. But what I'm saying here is the innovation that a lot of these companies that are in the industry today have brought is the ability for a customer to visualize what he can get out of this information, and really gives him a reason to start using it and start collecting it. So we do a lot of tours here at Becks, and one of the things that we like to talk about when we talk about FarmServer is a lot of times the guy on the farm that is making all the business decisions, he might be a little bit later in stages of life, you know, that 65, 70 still running the operation and might not understand everything that we're talking about in precision farming and in GPS receivers and all those fun things. But what that guy has is he has, you know, 40, 50, 60 years of knowledge going across these fields. And at some point in time, he's going to have to pass that information on to the next generation of farmers. And we see a lot of the new guys coming in that are very interested in these tools. And like I said, with all the innovation and companies that are out there, there's more and more interest coming from these companies. But it's amazing to see, things change and how some things just stay the same. From a Becks perspective, we have our platform called Becks Farm Server, and it is our digital farming solution for our customers. I'll talk more about it here in a minute, but internally here at Becks, how we describe precision farming in our Farm Server tool is, starting down there in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. We have a ton of information on our products, our corn and soybean and wheat products. We know where these products go. We know what they need. We know what populations to recommend. We have a ton of information on the products that we sell. Then we have a whole team of seed advisors. We have farmer dealers. We have agronomists. Then we have my team, the precision farming field advisors. There's a ton of information that these individuals have in their head that can help any customer at any time. A lot like you guys listening, you have a ton of information in your head that you need to get out to these customers to help them be successful on a year-to-year basis. And then one of our other legs of Becks is our practical farm research, which is PFR, is what we call it internally here. PFR is a research wing of Becks, and it's all around practical things that any farmer can do on their farm to make more bushels and to make more money on their bottom line. So really, if you think about it from a Becks perspective, we have these three big pieces of information that we need to get out to our customer base or to any customer base. And how we describe precision farming in our platform Farm Server it enables all of these other pieces of information we have here at Becks. So really, this diagram I have up on your guys' screen is really what Farm Server is. If you boil it down, take out all the bells and whistles and all the different tools, it's enabling these different pieces of information that we have here to get out to our customers. Getting into the nuts and bolts of what Farm Server is, I want to start out by saying that Farm Server is 100% free to any of our customers. One thing that we've been saying our entire life here at Becks is, we want farmers to succeed, and we're going to help farmers succeed. So we believe that providing them tools to make them successful year in and year out are going to keep them farming and keep them customers for a long time to come. So any of our customers that buys one bag of corn or one bag of beans, Farm Server is part of that package. And there's a tool in there for anybody. I'll get to that here in a minute. But inside Farm Server, we are a seed company. So one of the main tools that we have in there is a seed selection and seed placement tool. And so what that tool does is it helps customers best place each product that they have on order on which field it's going to perform the best in and help out with seeding recommendations. I'm not going to go through every one of these line item by line item. I'm going to hit a few of the big ones. But the seed selection tool is one of the large tools that we have out there in Farm Server. It can read information from your yield. So past yield history goes into placement of these products. Some soil type information goes into placing these products. So that's a tool that anybody can use to get on there and figure out the best place to put this product to have the ultimate goal of success for that year. From a yield map and analytic reporting, we have more reports than you can shake a stick at. Yield by hybrid, yield by application data, any of those sorts of reports you can get out of Farm Server. We can upload and store any data from any maker manufacturer. So, this is one of the things to definitely take home here is, outside of Farm Server, you got to have a platform that can read and write to anything. So if a guy has a blue tractor pulling a green planter and he harvests with a red combine, we want to make sure all of that information flows into one spot and that the customer can use it. And I'm talking about Farm Server right now, but think of any product that you might be using and make sure that it can do that. We do run across some of the the stranger monitor types out there, and we do our best to be able to support every one of them. So that's an important part of it. And then, the other part of it is, what happens with that data once you do get it into Farm Server. So we're part of that Ag Data Transparency seal. So the customer owns and controls his data at any time. One of the other things that's important to hopefully you guys listening is, I've dealt with some competitor products that whenever you put, let's just say, John Deere data in, you get a proprietary format out. We want to make sure that our customers, if they have a guy on the side that's doing some work for them, if they put a piece of data in our system, they can get it right back out in that native form. So if you put John Deere data in Farm Server and you need to get it to a trusted advisor to do something else with, that John Deere data comes right back out in its native form. So you could take that to a third party to have them do whatever you want. That's an important thing, especially for other people doing work with shared customers, because in all reality, everybody on this call, and we all share customers from a seed, from a fertilizer or chem or whatever. So we need to make sure that it's easy for the end user, which is the customer, to get that information to the right people. We have a full management zone creation tool, so they can go in and make prescriptions for seed and fertilizer, nitrogen, any of those sorts of things in there. We have a full iOS app. So a customer, we say this is when you're out in the field, this is the tool that you want to use. You can bring up your planting data and spray application data to see what's going on out there. And then down at the very bottom, another one that's really important is ROI. So our ROI tool is a very good starting point for a lot of customers to start getting their head wrapped around, ROI and, cost per acre, those sorts of things. So those are all tools that we have in Farm Server. There's a bunch more that I don't have listed here, but that's just a high overview view of what we have for our customers. Another part of Farm Server is getting that information in. It can be a challenge, pulling yield cards and things like that isn't the funnest job. And so we've done our best to partner with a multitude of companies to make sure that when a customer has data in, let's just say FieldView, and he wants to put it in our tool to do something, we've made a connection with those guys so that data can flow in and flow back out the way they need it. So, another thing about connections here is there's a point where, do I build something for our customers or do we partner with somebody? So you take our partnership with Centera. We are a seed corn company. We don't want anything to do with, controlling UAVs and making our own sensor to put on the UAV. So we found a company in Centera that is like-minded and can provide a lot of value to our customers, and partnered with those guys. Same with Soil Test Pro. We didn't want to have to go out and establish relationships with every lab across the United States and build our own iOS app. So we found a company in Soil Test Pro that allowed us to bring that information in together. Farm Server has changed a ton over the time, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that it's 100% perfect, because it's not, but it has changed a number of times over the years, and a lot of it is around usability for the customer. So we build Farm Server not for myself to use or our seed team. It is 100% for the grower to use. So a lot of the changes that we've made in Farm Server has been usability. So a customer says, hey, I'm having a hard time finding this section or that section and things like that. So we revamped Farm Server a number of times on the usability. That's one of the biggest things, and we continue to do that. And like I said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's perfect today, because it's not, and we still have some stuff to do to make it even more user friendly. But I think if you took a hard look at anybody in the industry, they would say the same thing. Usability is king if you have your own platform. So, from an overall perspective, the next few slides, I'm not specifically talking Farm Server here, but our recommendations when you're looking at a precision farming platform, know the whole story, help a customer understand the whole story. So I have a bunch of different maps up here, but if a customer calls you a service provider or a seed dealer or one of our seed dealers even, and says, hey, I'm having an issue out in the field, and you only know one piece of the puzzle, you're going to give that guy maybe some faulty information. So whatever platform you want to try to use, if it's Farm Server, that's awesome. If it's another one, that's awesome too. But from a customer standpoint, you need to have all the pieces of the puzzle there to start putting together a solution for that customer. Another thing, not talking specifically about any platform here, but having a team of people. So I've had the luxury here at Becks of having a great team of people around me from the seed side. I got some of the best seed advisors out there that really understand where our products work and where they don't. We have a full agronomy team that Jim Schwartz heads up, that he does a fantastic job. But know your strengths and know your weaknesses when you're building a team. Specifically from a precision farming standpoint, we have some guys in our team that are John Deere experts. We have guys on our team that are Case IH experts. We have SMS experts on our team. So, together, you don't have to know every single piece of this thing called precision farming, but know your team, know your weaknesses, and bring in that expert whenever you need to. And always remember, I don't know is still a really good answer at the end of the day. If you tell a customer, you know what, sir, I don't know, but I'm going to get back with you on that, that's key. So, once you get a precision farming team established, or you have one established, make sure you really know your weaknesses. Make sure you really know your strengths, and don't be afraid to say, you know what, I don't know, but I'm going to get back to you on that. Another thing about it from a platform standpoint, you got to have tools for every segment. So this is Farm Server up here. We just categorize from tools that anybody in the world can use up to tools that our most sophisticated guys use. But have something for everybody. Some of these new tools coming out in the industry, they're towards the bleeding edge of the customer line. If you have an offering or a tool for everybody throughout your entire customer base, that's where you're going to win at. And the other thing is, you can't force it. I don't know how many times I've heard in my career customers say, you know what, man, it really feels like you want this more than I do. Trying to get a customer to think in the precision farming world is not always easy. Farmers are it's an interesting occupation. There's a lot of freedoms out there, a lot of freedoms to do what you want to do and how you've done it your entire life, and that's awesome. There'll be a time when that customer is ready, so don't force it right out the gate. Things come if you start showing value. And at the end of the day, this is another one, not talking specifically Farm Server, but customer success is a full-time job. It's a full season job, and communication's king. You can have a very, very good product. You can have the best product in the industry, but if you don't have service, you don't really have a whole lot. In the communication part, I've always said, if you're sitting here thinking you're over communicating, then you're not bringing value to that customer when you're talking to them. The customers that you're bringing enough value to, every time you call, they're going to pick up that phone and they're going to answer it and they're going to want to talk because you're bringing value. So communication's key. And again, customer success is a full-time job. Some of the other things to keep an eye out for and really understand is this UAV and imagery space. And up on the screen there, I do have flying vehicles. This goes for ground rigs, but there's a ton of information you can glean from those that we try to keep up on. I got a guy on my team. This is full-time job is to look at UAVs and sensors to keep us up to date, so we can then in turn tell our customers, hey, if you're trying to solve this problem, why don't you use this platform with this camera? Same thing with sensors. There's a ton of really cool sensors out there, and there's a ton more coming. Some of the way that we keep up on all these things is we look outside the farming industry to see what kind of tools are out there. and see how we can kind of mold those into the agriculture field. But keep an eye on all these different sensors coming up, because they're going to help, everybody on our team and your guys' team hopefully be able to tell a customer more and more about their field throughout the season. And at the end of the day, some of these things can get extremely complicated, and it's best if you keep it simple and simplify as much as you can for the customer. Oversimplification, I don't know that it is ever a thing, but if you keep it simple, at the end of the day, you're going to be a lot better off. And I appreciate your time, and we'll answer some questions here after a bit, and that's back to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Craig. So don't forget, if you have a question for Craig, go ahead and type it in the chat box and we'll address it during our Q&A portion of the webinar. But in the meantime, we're going to move on to our second speaker of the day. Our second speaker of the day is Jeff Diven. Jeff graduated from Iowa State University with degrees in ag business and agronomy. While continuing to operate his family farm in north central Iowa with his father, he has held sales, product, and support positions with prominent ag tech startups. As an agronomy lead with Ceres Imaging, Jeff is committed to applying technology to drive efficiency and profitability on the farm. So thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us, and I'll go ahead and let you take it from here.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Yes, coming to you from what was a little bit of a snowy Iowa last night, but should get back to harvest here sometime later today. So yeah, talking to you today on behalf of Ceres Imaging. So we are a aerial imaging and analytics provider for many different crops and areas across the country. So we touch acres in about 16 states with 40 aircraft at this point. So what I'll do today is give you a little overview of kind of where we started from, probably a company that maybe not all the folks on the line here have heard about, and really kind of dive into just a couple examples of what we do to help that next level producer. So just kind of a little caveat right at the beginning here. Most of what we focus on is probably that second tier of producer, has dabbled in a little bit of imagery or just ag technology in general, and then going to the next level, and I'll display that here today. So Ceres was founded in 2014 with a start, kind of around just imagery in general in the state of California and trying to solve issues around drought and just scarce water availability. So that blossomed into basically at this point a 120-person company focusing on crops across the entire country, as well as operating internationally as well. So what we do from a day-to-day basis is help with different management decisions. Kind of a neat kickoff to the webinar there, just talking about everything that's out there. We've been in an interesting place here, probably for at least, 10 years, if not longer, where equipment and control of different equipment, whether that be a pivot, a sprayer, a planter, controlling those machines has always really outpaced the ability to, put a prescription into them or just intelligently dispatch them to do different things within the field. So that's where sensors, not just aerial sensors, could be physical sensors as well, but using different sensor data in combination with each other to make decisions, like is displayed here. So everything from managing water, if we've got the ability to control that pivot at different points in the field, doing it most effectively, applying our nutrients in the most effective places, and then just some of the simpler things of interacting with that field and the crops in that field with some really, fine and accurate data to see what's going on. So this is an example of what we fly. So we operate, like I said, about 40 aircraft across the country with this sensor attached to it. So we build these all in-house. And what this allows us to do is really be crop specific on the data that we deliver back. So, satellite, I kind of mentioned there at the beginning, this is kind of that step 2. Satellite, I think, is a great point to start. Kind of got my beginnings in ag tech with 4 years at Climate, and delivering satellite imagery to producers is great. That was a great first step, seeing just variability through the field, getting to interact with that. But then as you look at specific crops, there's a lot of different bands and kind of fine pieces of information that you can analyze those fields with, as well as thermal data, something that's just not available in the satellite constellation to date. And looking at that canopy temperature specifically for, measuring water use and water issues on that field. So just a few examples here I wanted to put together of the type of data that's delivered. And these can be used, independently. They can be used in conjunction with each other. Lots of different applications here, but just a little bit of a taste of what we look at. Number one, using that thermal data that I mentioned, is water stress. So whether we're talking, pivot irrigated crops, drip irrigated crops, kind of all the different methods that we have out there, looking at that canopy and having that give us a signal of what is going on out in that field for water availability. So this is something that, there's a lot of moisture probes. Anybody who's familiar with irrigation on the line here has probably worked with a moisture probe. Great data in that very spot that probe is driven into the ground. So as you can see in an image like this, there's a lot of variability within a given field, or with even in a portion of that field. So taking information like that and extrapolating it across an entire field or an entire operation. So combining both physical and spatial elements here to determine water stress on a field and make corrections if they can be made. Next step, and this kind of, there's a pivot pictured here, but this is as effective on any dryland crops as well, is understanding chlorophyll. So not just, how much plant is out there, which biomass has kind of been a long-standing function of NDVI, has a tendency to saturate a bit when the crop gets far along and there's just a lot of plant out there. We use a combination of data here that's very sensitive to chlorophyll and overall health of that tissue of the plant. So that gets us a couple things. Number one, it maintains a very accurate depiction of what's going on in the field all season long. And we can use this to, tissue sample. We can use it to make yield predictions, or even substitute yield maps. So in crops where we don't have as good of yield monitoring like we do in grain, potatoes, sugar beets, some root veg, even things like cotton, using this to understand where the variability in field came from when we just know the overall output of the field as a unit. So we can basically back into a yield map using chlorophyll data from the season. And then, just having imagery has kind of been a little bit where, as a whole, the industry has tripped up in the past. Lots of pretty pictures being displayed to folks, and you're kind of on your own to some extent to figure out what to do with them. We're working very hard to turn that into tools and actions with our analytics. So not just here's my pretty red, yellow, green image of a field. I, turn that into zones and then really take that to the next step and potentially make an application with it. So, this is just an example here of turning that chlorophyll map that we just looked at into actual zones. So 3 different zones here. If we're going to go out and apply fertilizer in season, or something along those lines, we can actually figure out where we should apply them to be most effective. And the other side of this too, kind of just a plug for the Becks PFI report, some really great data about what's working in a field. And another way to use this, most producers are probably going to try that on a small scale. So analyzing, in season, how those different areas are reacting. So we can actually analyze zones remotely in season if you've put in a trial of some kind and see how they're comparing to the rest of the field. So just some of those little things, putting the data to work for you rather than just making it be, a big lift and burden on your shoulders to figure out what to do with it. And this is another example of that. So when we fly all the fields of an operation, for example, here, Field Rank is a tool where there's no way you can spend, a day or even a morning looking through hundreds and hundreds of images on fields. So what we do is use machine learning to actually rank them to say, all right, these, 80% of your fields are green, kind of indicated here in the timeline, meaning that there's no significant issues from the last time it was flown. And then a caution in yellow and a red dot there indicating, and you can get this as a report to indicate, hey, if you're going to spend a half hour or an hour today looking at fields or investigating fields, go to these 2 or 3% of your operation because there's significant changes from the last time that were flown, or we've detected a pattern, particularly in irrigation. If we see a circle from like a plug nozzle, we've detected a pattern that we deem to be important for you to investigate. So just trying to, dilute that a little bit from just a very large subset of data. And then the last thing I'll talk about here, just a specific project to kind of dig in is, and I chose this today just because it's kind of an in-season piece of information here, looking at soil productivity and creating zones from bare soil imagery. So the example here on the left is what we've flown post-tillage on a field, and I overlaid the Surgo soil data there in yellow. So when you kind of talk about, step 1, getting your feet wet, and then step 2 and 3, Surgo is, a data set that's been out there for a very long time. And, lots of people and lots of tools still use this information to create, some planting rate prescriptions or just anything, I guess, for managing zones. You can see that while that generally catches some of the differences in soil texture in that field, when you turn that bare soil image into zones using our zone tool, you get the output on the right. So you can just see there kind of going from starter, a little bit training wheels on the left to really digging in on the right. You can see the emphasis towards the light textured knobs on the east side of that field, and then really focusing in on the heavy soils through the middle of the field. And then this data can be used, in conjunction with your agronomist or who's ever helping make your decisions for fall fertility, for where you may go and sample for prescriptions the following year. Kind of neat data because it's not going to change much in the near future. So you can use this, year over year and really ramp up that field. So with that, I'll wrap it up and pass it back to you, Alex. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Well, we have one last speaker of the day. And if you have any questions for Jeff, please go ahead and type it into the chat box now. Our final speaker of the day is Kyle King. Kyle grew up. Oh, hi, Kyle.
Go ahead.
Kyle grew up on a family farm in western Iowa and is a graduate of Iowa State University with a degree in agribusiness management. When not at work, he enjoys spending quality time with his wife and kids. As a family, they enjoyed spending time at the lake, wake surfing, snow skiing, soccer, and family vacations. Over the last decade, Kyle has led teams in sales as well as technical expertise across legacy Monsanto seeds and trait business and the Climate Corporation. In his current role, Kyle's team serves as the link between the science and commercial functions at the Climate Corporation, leading protocol implementation, knowledge transfer processes, and training for new feature releases for Climate Field View platform. The industry's first and most broadly connected digital app platform. Thanks for joining us today, Kyle, and go ahead and take it away for us.
All right, thank you, Alex. Hey, good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you're at on the call. Really appreciate the opportunity here to share some insights really around what we've been working on and what we have in the marketplace, but also what are we working on when we start thinking about future products and most importantly as we think about partnering with our customers to evaluate data being collected on their farm. And that's one of the most powerful tools that we have. If I think about my last 20 years of experience in this ag industry, all the way from ag retail to my time, sitting at kitchen tables, really having a deep discussion around, a total farm operation and really trying to take a look at it at a 360 view. I really, connect with how FieldView, partners with farmers and dealers and agronomy professionals alike, really throughout the whole season, from really the planning phase. And so you think about really the winter months into early spring around what is a farmer doing, why are they doing it, how do we help set them up, and to really capture that image, capture that layer, so they can really start to dive in from a performance standpoint, and then utilizing the Climate FieldView Drive and or other data sources through our 65 platform partners, where you can really start bringing data in the system, from spring through summer, right? So collecting that planning layer, collecting as applied layers during the summer, whether it be around second pass fertility, whether it be around fungicide applications, insecticide applications, partners in the imagery business that are able to feed data into the Climate FieldView account. And final, the last piece of the story really is around harvest. My experience has been, farmers have been making great decisions, especially the ones in business today, making great decisions for a long time. But what I find is every one of them that I've talked to in my 20 years is looking for, what are those 2 or 3 things I need to tweak, right? They just keep thinking about, how do I continue to really fine tune my operation to do a little bit better tomorrow than what I'm doing today. I've never met a farmer yet that says, hey, you know what, this year was pretty good, let's take 5% off of that, right? So they're looking for ways, and this allows you and their trusted business partners that those farmers trust with partnering with their FieldView account, to sit there and say, hey, what am I doing that I need to stop doing? What am I doing that I need to keep doing that's providing me bushels in a positive way? And then what am I not doing that you see other people doing that I need to try and start doing? And this is a way that you can really start to quantify and qualify a lot of those measurements, and really add to that recommendation and build that story. And so, as we really think about, Climate FieldView being really a global company, and when we think about, farmers being connected around the world, here's just a snapshot of what we are seeing for, connected cabs. When we think about cabs that are streaming data with the FieldView Drive, the top map there, that if you can see it, is just really a snapshot from really a week and a half ago, back in the middle of October, of, hey, really across North America, what do we have for active combines? And really since the 1st of August, we've had over 15,000 combines streaming data live into Climate FieldView. And the beauty of that is, if you start to marry and match that up with that second picture, which is really, over 16,000 planters and over 4,500 sprayers, for the calendar year 2019 has been streaming data into FieldView. Now you start thinking about matched data, right? Starting to get really, analytical around hybrid variety performance. You're matching that planning data. You're matching those other application data with the final piece of the puzzle, and that's yield. What was the outcome? And that is really the power. And we start thinking about recommendations of what to do for 2020 and beyond within a farmer's operation. So we know that farmers are excited when they can really interact with their data in near real time. To the point where they want to get more pieces of equipment connected. We have farmers coming on board wanting to get their pieces of equipment. Today we are really brand agnostic when it comes to OEMs. The major OEMs out there, we've got some type of connection to be able to view other data live in the system through the iPad, streaming data with the FieldView Drive. And for those that aren't FieldView compatible, and they're capturing data geospatially with a monitor in their combine or planter or sprayer. In many cases, not all, they can bring that data in through the data inbox or through our API partners. One of the teams that we brought on to help really diagnose and make sure that we can get those cabs connected so farmers can view and interact with their data almost immediately when they complete a field is and what we've gotten feedback from many of you on the phone is help us, right? This isn't an easy conversation, to get all of these different types of equipment and monitors and GPS globes all to be able to talk together. So we developed a team, what we call climate activation specialists. So today we've got over 150 of these folks out in the countryside that their sole purpose is to come alongside you, come alongside dealers out there to work with those farmers to make sure that they got the right setups, to make sure they got the right equipment. And so it can be a very seamless process of getting those cabs connected to where they're streaming data, and farmers can have a very positive experience with that. So if you have customers that you are trying to get connected to Climate Field View, reach out to us, reach out to our support line, and they can help get a climate activation specialist out there. We do have activation managers in the field. If you happen to know who your activation manager is, feel free to reach out to them. But we can work at getting help out there to make sure that your customers have a very positive experience working with you and working with Climate Field View. And so when you really start thinking about that match data and streaming data and getting this data, all of this data a farmer uses, has used, or has collected over the years. I heard the comment around thumb drives. How do we get all of that data, into one place? Now you can really start using it. And everything we've really talked to up till now is really a rear view mirror look. It's really looking at what I did and, what we are aggressively starting to work on and have some tools that we're in deep testing with is now how do we take all that data, all of the layers and the multitude of data we have from a Bayer organization, and how do we now start to put that to work and allow us to look out of the windshield and really start to utilize predictive analytics to come alongside farmers and help them clearly identify what is it that I need to do, and using their data to solidify the recommendation for their farm. And two of those pieces really is around a seed advisor product, and the other one's around disease predictions. And the first one being disease. I started my career, back in the late 90s, early 2000s in ag retail, and spent the next approximately 10, 12 years of my career, really in the dirt, in the field, from a seed manufacturing standpoint, with the legacy Monsanto teams. And one thing I realized really fast when it came to, disease scouting and disease or fungicide applications, my history tells me that we're typically 2, 3, 4 weeks too late, because usually I'd get phone calls say, hey, do I have a problem on my field? Usually when the first time somebody saw a crop duster buzz over their head, right, and say, hey, they're spraying something. What are they spraying? Where are they spraying at? And do I need to spray? And so how do we take that 2 to 4 week leeway, and how do we be more predictive and get very specific around disease modeling, disease risk? And so then we can get very prescriptive of where you need to go look, and so we can hopefully capture back that stress that's been taken away over that 2 to 4 week leeway, and be on the front side of it, and minimize that stress and increase bushels on the farm. Also building tools to how do you start using machine learning and artificial intelligence to really use that to identify weeds. The years I've been walking fields, I clearly just don't know everything about diseases, but whether you use Google searches or what have you, or you carry around some of these little pocket books that have some pretty good disease identification tools in there. And how do you start to utilize an app to really clearly identify the disease for you when you're in the field? So now you can get very prescriptive of what does that recommendation need to be by product, by rate, by timing, and application method to maximize, the the mitigation of the disease and hopefully the stop of the spread of the disease or compounding of other diseases entering the plant. And so that's really our first step as we think about how do we help minimize risk, minimize stress in those fields, and how do we do it digitally to where we can take a lot of the guessing out of it, and we can be very, very confident in that recommendation when we go to that farmer and say, here's what we see, and here's a solution to that problem. The next thing we're working on and actually having some pretty large testing right now is is really our first our seed advisor. And so when you really think about the years of data and the millions of data points that we've collected through our Bayer R&D systems, our climate field view research farms, we've got a multitude of data points and years of data on these hybrids. For how do we now start to put that to work, and how do we use that predictive analytics to really start thinking about what is the best hybrid for the best field, and let's make sure we get it at the right density to maximize the return. And when I think about my seed years, I always thought I did a pretty decent job. When I think about high level, here's a good mix of hybrids for that operation, this many bags of these different hybrids. Where it got a little more difficult for me is getting very field specific on that recommendation, because there was a lot of times where that field could be any one of these 3 hybrids, or that field could be any one of these 4 hybrids. They're all going to do really well for you, but in reality, one's going to do better than the rest. And so how do we use analytics to really find that one that's going to do better than the rest, even if it's 4, 5, 6 bushel? And so we built the algorithm, validated within FieldView really in 2016, did a farm test in Illinois in 2017 to say, hey, does this work? And what we found was we had a 77% win rate, which basically said, hey, Mr. Farmer, you pick your hybrid that you were going to plant there. Let's do a science recommendation through Seed Advisor. We had a 77% win rate with a 6 bushel advantage. And so we expanded that test really across 3 states, Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri in 2018, and well over 100,000 acres tested. We saw a 9 bushel advantage in 18 with an 80+% win rate across those trials. And so we expanded that across to, kind of did a limited launch and beta test across those 3 states. And we ran that through dealers. This is really Climate Field View's first product to be dealer only facing. A farmer cannot access this technology without going through a dealer. We understand what that conversation around seed looks like between dealers and farmers, and we want to make sure that we provide dealers and seed professionals with the tools to maximize that recommendation. And so really for 2019, we saw the Seed Advisor be enrolled across 700,000 dealers, or 700,000 acres here in the Midwest, and obviously still waiting development of what those results were. And so as we really move into 2020, we've expanded that from 3 states to 7 states. We brought in Indiana, Missouri, southern part of Wisconsin, and the southeast part of South Dakota. And so still doing testing on it, still making sure that that the model is working. We anticipate some good trial results for 2020 that can build the confidence, and we're going to continue to expand this across the core Midwest states, and I think in a fashion we're going to slow walk this thing to make sure the recommendation's solid, and that we add value to the conversation that you all are having with your customers. So today, that is solely focused on the Bayer internal brands until we get the thing fine-tuned and honed in on exactly what it is, what tool is, and how to be successful with it. But we are looking for ways on how do we most effectively expand that across other seed companies in the U.S. today and globally down the road. So with that, we'll take it back to you, Alex, and be ready for questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kyle. Well, so now we have about enough time to do about a 10-minute Q&A session. So if you have a question for Craig, Jeff, or Kyle, please go ahead and type it into the chat box now. We went ahead and had a couple of questions during the presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and start off. Craig, the first question is for you, actually. And it asks, to which extent are the data Beck receives, or to which extent does the data Beck receives remain within the company without selling or extending it to other firms?
Yeah, that's good. That's a very good question. From a Beck's perspective, none of it. The customer has full control over all of that. So we do not sell data. We do not. At this point, we don't. We're not even looking at the data internally. Like I said, my whole presentation was helping farmers succeed. So, you have a pile of money that you can spend to make tools to help customers be successful, or you could use that same pile of money to use that data internally to do this, that, and the other. We have chosen to keep building tools to help customers be successful, and that data never leaves Becks. It never leaves. It never goes anywhere that the customer does not say, "Hey, I want my data to go to this person." Hopefully that answers the question.
I think that's a great answer to the question. The next one was actually directed for everyone. So how about we go in the order that we went for our presentation, starting with Craig and ending with Kyle. And the question is, there are numerous platforms and tools out there, and we've only talked about 3 of them today. What are the best examples of profitable go-to-market business plans from the platform's provider's view for digital ag technology services, and why?
Yeah, can you repeat that one more time? I got a little bit of it.
Yeah, no problem. It's a long one. What are the best examples of profitable go-to-market business plans from the platform provider's view for digital ag technology services, and why?
Yeah, starting with me, this is Craig. That's a weird one for me to answer, being that I run a free platform. So that one's a little bit hard for me personally to speak to. We see that the value in our tool, is somewhat subsidized by the seed, but there has to be some meaningful information going back to the farmer for it to be profitable. And if you ask me if I'm seeing that out of our farm server, I'm going to say yes. The ROI section. Well, let me take a step back. Some of this isn't just necessarily the platform itself, but it's the trusted advisor along with the platform that brings the most value to a customer. And if you look at it from a Becks perspective, you marry the two with a solid platform like a farm server and a very capable trusted advisor. There's unlimited return to the farmer from the Becks perspective.
Awesome. Thanks. Jeff or Kyle?
Yeah, I can give just a quick tidbit here. It sounds like maybe from like a retail perspective, a successful go-to-market. One thing we've seen, so we work, just basically entirely through distribution and different retailers and advisors, consultants, things of that nature. I think probably the most successful plan or way to get started is to, number one, work on kind of a small subset of fields. So kind of dip your toe in, don't just jump in head first on like an entire operation, something of that nature. And I think secondly, like have a problem in mind to solve or a goal to solve. So if you're trying to, start with maybe optimizing irrigation on a circle or two, or maybe you want to optimize seeding rate on a field or two, nitrogen on a field or two, pick something. I think oftentimes what happens is people are, hey, I'm going to jump in and do this precision ag and data management and the whole 9 yards and just get very overwhelmed and underwater fast. And I can, personally on my farm, I can speak to this too. But so I say try to just pick something, whatever it is, and start there on a couple fields, and definitely don't try to solve all problems in one single year across your whole operation.
Yeah, I'll, as I kind of think about the last 3 years working with dealers and folks incorporating climate field view into their business, a couple of things really come to mind. Is um, if you're looking to start to get into this into digital ag space, what I've seen be extremely successful is get somebody dedicated, somebody extremely focused on it, that can lead the organization, be that local technical expert within your teams. That way, you got that resource ready to go wherever you're at, versus waiting on somebody else. There's a lot of resources out here to help people and get people going, but I've seen the most success be with when you have an in-house individual. The other thing I've seen be very successful, is really utilizing digital agriculture to really change the relationship, deepen the relationship that they have with their customers. I've seen relationships and business really change as that farmer's trust with their data changes, right? So who's going to step in that circle and help that farmer answer these questions, help that farmer problem solve. I've seen data where within our own system, as we really measure individuals who have adopted climate field view in their business versus those who haven't, and there is a clear distinction of increased sales, not just from a seed standpoint, but other inputs that we believe is driven by a relationship to help farmers solve problems. To Jeff's point is, and now you can really start to get really analytical with that.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I think we have a couple of more minutes for a couple of more questions. So now, Jeff, you and Kyle both talked about this a little bit, about making your data work for you and getting a lot of data and making sure that farmers can use it as they go forward. But how do you ensure that your customer doesn't get overwhelmed by all of the data they have streaming into them? How can they make it actually work for them?
Yeah, I can start here, and I'll just kind of toss it to Kyle, because it's some of this lives in their platform FieldView. I think probably the first way to not get overwhelmed is, and I should have mentioned maybe when I was talking, our data streams into FieldView, and I use it personally on my farm as well. I think the first way to not get overwhelmed by it is to look at it in one place. And even Craig talked about that as well. Just if you're looking at it in a single platform, or as that's not always an option, as few of platforms as possible. I think that's a place to start. And then it's to look at, I think the things that are in your control is start there. So if you've got certain check strips or different rates or just things like that, where, maybe it's two different things you can look at side by side, and not try to look at, all your soil samples on top of your seeding rate, on top of your nitrogen, things like that. Just, maybe pick one or two of them and see if you can, delineate between the differences, rather than trying to look at all things at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I echo a lot what Jeff said. I mean, we see, over 45% of the farmers are doing, hybrid trials, variety trials on their farm. So they're testing stuff, right? I think having, to what Jeff said, having clear vision. The other thing I think is, to help get very directed. I mean, we all have other senses, right? We're seeing stuff when we're out in the field. And so how do you start to utilize these digital tools to now start to understand what the impact was? How do you start to understand, imagery, whether it be, all the different imagery types out there? How does that start to affect and look differently through the field? But if you just come into it and say, what does my data say, without having a real purpose of what you're looking for, it can be overwhelming. But I also think that's why, we're finding, within climate field view, an extremely high percentage of our customers are asking other individuals to help them with their data through our sharing function. A lot of those decisions are not being made in a silo. They are looking for someone to help them with it. And I think it also comes back to what I talked about earlier around the performance measurement, with that relationship and that trust. Those who are utilizing digital sources to help farmers with recommendations, build that confidence, and solve problems, they're seeing a faster rate of business, with those customers than those who aren't.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we have just enough time for one more question. So I have another question for all three of you, and whoever would like to start first can go ahead and jump in. But the question is, what is the biggest question you recommend asking before choosing a precision ag or digital tool plan?
Yeah, I think before we can recommend or choose really anything out there, as a consumer, it's really, what do you want? What do you want to accomplish? What's your end goal? And what have you used to date? And probably most importantly, what have you used today to drive decisions, right? How do you make decisions? And if you had a new look at stuff, would it change how you make your decisions, right? So to me, it really comes down to, what have you done, and what do you want to do?
Yeah, I'd echo the same thing. Just having that conversation with the customer and really doing a deep dive on what he's looking for, what his capabilities are, and his willingness to learn how to do it, and what tools he can use to accomplish that. It's like I said, in mind, it's communication. Just talking with the guy to understand him and his operation.
Yeah, it's similar from my perspective. Maybe the one thing I'll add, just to not be repetitive, is no matter what does ultimately get chosen at the beginning, make sure you're seeing it through and making it a point to use it and follow up in season. Over the years of working with different technologies and different platforms, there's always a really nice build up over the winter and in the spring of people using the tool, interacting with it, things like that. And then they get busy through the summer and the growing season and use it less and less and less until you get to fall. And then it's kind of that awkward conversation of, man, I paid for this, didn't really get anything out of it. Not that it's a bad tool by any means, but typically I think those issues can be resolved by just making it a point to interact with the tool in season. So maybe it's every 3 months, put something on the calendar, or maybe even every month or a couple of weeks in season, and just make sure you're touching the tool, using it. It's going to be a lot easier to extract value at the end of the year, no matter what platform you choose, if you make sure that you're engaging with it during the season.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, that is all the time we have for today. So I'd like to give a big thank you to our three speakers, Craig, Jeff, and Kyle, one last time for joining us today. And thank you to everyone for participating. I hope you found this information of value. Again, a recording of this webinar will be made available later today at seedworld.com, and you'll also receive an email with the webinar link attached. Thanks again, and we just hope you have a terrific day. This is Alex Martin of Seed World signing off.